Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hi, how you doing, everybody? It is Monday, December 12th, 2016. Monday, again. I don't seem to be able to put a stop to this at all, or even to be able to put a stop to myself saying to be able twice, apparently. Wow, okay. Monday morning, time to wake up, shake the cobwebs from your head, and let's all get together on a commune and be Russian, I guess. Wow. The weekend was kind of weird. It turns out something Russia. This was a story, of course, that came up during the campaign, although Donald Trump denies it for some strange reason. But I don't know, a lot of people seem to have forgotten exactly the terms in which Hillary Clinton brought this whole thing up. But Friday night, we sort of plunged into this storyline all over again with the, you know what, I'm not even sure how it broke this time, but it's the same damn thing. The CIA's, I guess, I don't know, it was being styled as a secret report, but I guess it's not that secret. Or if it was secret, then I guess maybe now you really do have reason to give a call to Hillary Clinton and say, so what's the story with this thing here where you said in the middle of the debate that exactly that thing that we learned later, down to the number of intelligence agencies who had concurred in the diagnosis, I suppose, that Russia was attempting to interfere with our elections. We still, I guess importantly, still are not at the point where anybody has been able to effectively prove that there's been any kind of hacking of the machines or vote counts, although it was, I guess it was proven early on that Russian or suspected Russian sources, they outsource their hacking for the most part, had been probing the state election agency computers and databases, etc. Though I'm not certain that they came to any conclusion about what exactly they were doing besides testing the atmosphere. In other words, how difficult it might be to penetrate at some later date, I guess. I have someone has provided me in a tweet a helpful clip of Hillary Clinton bringing this whole thing up. We'll have to play it for you just to set the context. But what a weird weekend. I mean, and the groundswell of concern just continued to grow over the weekend and on into Sunday. But I don't know, there's sort of a mass amnesia, I think, about exactly what Hillary Clinton said. Plenty of people remembered, but I mean, I actually did make an effort to watch most of the debates this time, which was painful. But it didn't occur to me until someone said afterwards, this literally, almost to the word, had been brought up by Hillary Clinton. I've got the audio here.
A foreign
Let's
government.
Run it. Here, let me back up here. Thanks to the folks tweeting this around today. This, by the way, in response to a morning, I think, tweet from Donald Trump basically saying, well, here it is. Unless you catch, quote, like air quotes, and catch hackers in the act, it's very hard to determine who was doing the hacking. Why wasn't this brought up before the election? Okay. So by now, of course, we all realize that it hasn't. And here's Hillary Clinton doing it. Why not?
Had a foreign government trying to interfere in our election. We have 17 intelligence agencies, civilian and military, who have all concluded that these espionage attacks, these cyber attacks, come from the highest levels of the Kremlin.
Now, I'm going to pause it just for a second. That's the basic accusation. And, of course, the citation to 17 intelligence agencies, which makes me, you have to believe that it's exactly the same allegation, just the one that's just been repeated. I mean, it's a month later, or 2 months later, But I don't know. I'm not really sure why that didn't catch our attention in the same way. Everyone heard it. Everyone saw it. And, of course, now we have Donald Trump, the ridiculous spectacle of him trying to say this didn't happen. I mean, first he was bragging how many people watched the debates. Now he's like, none of you were there. But, okay. I mean, he's got a point in that there's a short-term memory problem. I have it. But now, of course, let me play the last half of it. You begin to hear the objections. She's literally bringing it up to his face. Or, as I said this morning, and I guess Bill enjoyed tremendously and put it in his morning quote. She was literally saying it to his bloated pumpkin of a face. That was originally a little bit longer, but hey, Twitter. I believe the full version of it was your bloated pumpkin ass looking face, whatever, or harvest moon of. I don't remember exactly how I put it, but I had to shorten it. But yeah, she's literally bringing it up to his face in front of 60 million viewers, and why didn't you bring this up? So let's play the rest and listen to him sitting there, like I said, sitting there like a lump, just screaming no over this. You have no idea. You have no clue. Our country has no idea. By the way, our country has. What do you mean, our country, by the way? Comrade, just checking in with you about whose country is which here. But it's literally brought up to your face, and all you have to say about it is no, and you're screaming no, and now I find out 2 months later you had no idea what you were yelling no about. It was just that Hillary Clinton was saying it, so you yelled no. And you say you're not a politician. Congratulations, you've graduated, sir. You finally made it. No. What did I just say no to? Yeah. All right, well, let's play the rest. You'll hear the objections. Oh, the media could not be played. Now, all of a sudden, the media could not be played. Let me I'll refresh the frame here, and we'll give that a try again. Here we go. We'll have to turn up the sound on this one more time. Here we are.
17 intelligence agencies, civilian and military, who have all concluded that these espionage attacks, these cyber attacks, come from the highest levels of the Kremlin, and they are designed to influence our election. I find that deeply disturbing,
Secretary
and
Clinton.
I think it's
She
time
has no
that you
idea
take a
whether it's
stand,
Russia,
because
China, or anybody
I am
else.
not quoting
She has
myself.
no idea.
I am quoting
Hillary, you
17.
have no idea.
17 do you doubt 17
Our
military
country has
and
no idea.
civilian agencies? Well,
Yeah, I
he'd
doubt
rather
it. I doubt
believe
it.
Vladimir Putin than the military and civilian intelligence professionals who are sworn to protect us.
There you have it. I mean, she's as livid about this as anything, and she ought to be, and I guess we all ought to be now, and try and figure out how much of this really happened and what did it do. And I mean, you're forget about it in terms of what to do about it. You're just in uncharted territory there. I want to put that out there on the record. And I'll put out on the record again, it still feels weird to be sitting here saying, oh yeah, Russia. It's antiquated, it's weird. That's, of course, what they're counting on. And it's not a bad strategy either. It still feels weird, and I'm not going to get used to it anytime soon. And then, of course, I mean, there's just nothing in terms of remedies for this. I mean, there are, just in terms of things that we've done in the past that people are familiar with that they won't view as somehow less than legitimate, even though it's as legitimate as can be. If the electors, if the Electoral College were to somehow take this into account and say, I just can't cast my votes this way, it would take an enormous amount of coordination before the fact in order to make something that they do stick. It's probably, I mean, one of the more likely outcomes, of course, would be for electors, particularly those in states where they are not considered to be legally bound to vote for the popular vote winner within their state. Those folks are going to have some trouble. But again, we've been spending an awful lot of time talking about violations of law that have no remedy attached to them. So I don't very much whether anybody's going to go to jail over this. I guess there's probably some states that might have attached remedies to this. There might be fines. There might be prison time for all I know. I doubt very much whether that was attached. But, of course, lots of prominent constitutional scholars also offering pro bono legal representation for anybody who dares to do this. But I still don't know that they're going to get to the numbers that it takes to make a significant difference. In that, even if they were to let's say, borrow electoral votes from his total and report to the, you know what it looks like to me? I'm trying to click on my Skype to make sure that the line is open, and it doesn't look like it's really doing the job. I'm going to restart Skype so that Greg can call in, because any minute I'll probably get the, hey, I was listening, but now I can't call in signal. Let's try this again. But what I was saying, before I so rudely interrupted myself, I guess, even if enough electors were to defect or to somehow cast a vote as, I guess, what they would call faithless electors, although I don't know whether that's necessarily the term you want to lay on them at this point. If you get him below 270, that's a triggering event. But what does it trigger? It triggers, of course, the opportunity for the House of Representatives to vote by state. The delegations will have to come up with one vote each on who should be the president as among the top 3 electoral vote getters. So where does that leave us? With a majority of Republicans in the House, of course, it likely means they just turn right back around and elect Donald Trump anyway. I mean, unless, of course, you've clouded it. I mean, there is something to it. If they were to do something like this, presumably it clouds his reputation enough such that they perhaps doubt themselves in coming back and electing him. But again, it would require an extraordinary amount of coordination for not only for electors to all agree to keep anyone, or at least Donald Trump, under 270 electoral votes, but to agree on who they might want to put forward as a third name for consideration in the House of Representatives anyway, plus, of course, coordination among, and I don't even know where this coordination would be done, among members of the House of Representatives in terms of whether or not they're willing to either, in the face of that extraordinary action, turn around and elect Donald Trump anyway, or defect to some either different Republican or some other alternative, and they would likely want to agree ahead of time who they would land on. And another thing, I mean, as I mentioned, the states vote as states. It's a weird thing in the House of Representatives. They don't just take a roll call vote and all the Republicans vote for X person. The delegations have to get together and decide among themselves who their one vote will go to. Delegations that are majority one party or another will work that out accordingly. Delegations that are split evenly will deadlock and may not be able to cast a vote at all. And, when you work it all out, the Republicans have the advantage there. But given that they have to vote this way, the question will be, do Republicans in the House of Representatives, or whatever you want to call it, Rumpelstiltskin, whatever, House of Rumpelstiltskin, do they get together as a conference and decide all Republicans are going to cast their votes this way? Do they caucus as states? Do they turn back to the governors of their states? Do they go and speak? Do they barnstorm the state and try and get a sense of who the voters want? I'm not even sure who people would be listening to. The default fallback position, the easiest thing to do would be for them to get together as a Republican caucus and decide, here's what we're going to do, and we're going to do it fast. And that leaves, of course, choosing the presidency to Paul Ryan and I guess the leaders of any of the factions. Unless the electors send Paul Ryan's name, which is a possibility, that would be an easy way to land on something else. But if they send, what's his name, Evan McMullen, for instance, I don't know that any members of the House want to land there. So it would be enormously complicated, and you might end up with Donald Trump anyway, plus the faithless electors paying fines. So I don't really know. I don't know what to recommend to you, but I can recommend this. Let's move on to some other stories, because other things did happen. Unless, of course, Greg may want to talk about this espionage all day long, for all I know. Good morning, Greg.
Hi, and I might. The funny thing is that the end result of that is that if it goes to the House, in my opinion, Trump will still be, quote, president.
Trump will still be. I like that story. He'll still be. Yeah, very likely would be.
With quotes about it. And, in fact, his entire presidency is going to have quotes about it, based on the intelligence that we're learning today.
Doubtless all day. Okay. Yeah. This is weird.
I mean, there are several amazing things about what happened over the weekend. Mm-hmm. One is the media actually covered this. 2, they covered it for more than one day. 3,
yes,
it did more than just say, we're covering it because Trump denies story.
Yeah.
It was more than that. Sure, they did that. Times was great at that. New York Times said, Trump accused of treason. Trump says it didn't happen. Basically that was their he said, she said version of it. We'll get to that in a minute. Jay Rosen has a nice tweet storm on that. But it was a big story. It is a big story. It broke Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's 3 days later, and it's still a huge story. And Trump is trying to gaslight people on it. Gaslighting meaning trying to convince psychologically that something that didn't happen happened, and something that happened didn't happen.
Oh yes.
And one of the funny
great article
tweets was of course Trump saying, as you read in your introduction, with the quotes around it and everything, that somehow this didn't happen. He said, unless you catch, quote, hackers, end quote, in the act, it's very hard to determine who was doing the hacking. Why wasn't this brought up before the election? And that quote, and that tweet quote, was retweeted.
Yes.
With Hans Noel doing the retweeting. He's one of the authors of The Party Decides. And he just said gaslighting.
Huh. Okay.
I mean, it's pretty clear that that's what's going on.
Hans.
For the record.
Booby. Yes.
Booby. Honey, what are you doing here? Joint statement from the Department of Homeland Security and Office of the Director of National Intelligence on Election Security dated October 7th, 2016. Of note, because the third Hillary Clinton debate, that's the one where she wore white, that was October 19th. So this happened prior to the debate. And the immediate release from the DHS press office says the U.S. intelligence community is confident that the Russian government directed the recent compromises of emails from U.S. persons and institutions, including from U.S. political organizations. The recent disclosures of alleged hacked emails on sites like DLC Leaks and WikiLeaks and by the Guccifer 2.0 online persona are consistent with the methods and motivations of Russian-directed efforts. These thefts and disclosures are intended to interfere with the U.S. election process. So this is a statement, goes on a little bit longer, but it was October 7th. It was clearly out there prior to the debate. Clinton referencing it is referencing a press release from the Department of Homeland Security. And so Trump, of course, is wrong, and of course everybody knew about it before the election.
Yeah,
just as a matter of fact, and so he's gaslighting people on it.
Yes. I mean, there's no other word for it. And by the way,
lying is the other word.
Well, yes. I don't know why I said that. I'm lying that there's a lot of words for it. So I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right. So it's a big story, and
yes,
it's incredible that it's just not going away. Yes, all of this really should have been a big story day after day after day after day prior to the election. That is a media fail. But it's a story now, and they're running with it, and it's important that they do. The other side of it is that since Trump tweeted about it, that is, of course, permission structure for the media to say, okay, we're allowed to talk about this story.
Right. That's true. That they do need that. I mean, they're not supposed to, but it helps.
So let's just go right at the bottom of the list of things I sent you.
Bottom of the list.
I have a series of tweet storms that I got from Storify.
Wow. Oh, you have a series of tweet storms?
There's 4 of them.
This is a Storify of Storify?
At the bottom of your Skype thing. There's one from Jay Rosen, one from Grudge, one from John Schindler, and one from Eric Garland.
I thought you storified all of your Storifys into one meta Storify.
I messaged you with the Storifys here.
Okay,
so I'm directing you to Jay Rosen.
Jay Rosen, ready.
Ready? Click
Yes.
on it. Jay Rosen warns on the coming press response to and from Donald Trump. For those asking, how bad is it likely to get for the American press as a check on power, things to look for in the next 6 to 8 months. Already in gear, Trump loyalists, like Jeffrey Lord being the model, are recruited into the press as a gaudy show of balance.
I see that.
There, The implied message from journalism to the Trump forces is don't hurt us, we'll be good.
Okay.
Don't hurt us, we'll be good is also a subtext when the report is accusation-driven rather than evidence-based. From Trump, a steady flow of easy-to-check lies is both a show of power and to cast the press in the role of petty but hateful antagonists. Ugly attacks on individual journalists who somehow provoke the POTUS and his troll army online will intensify. But here's the thing to watch for. The cabinet, GOP office holders, and opinion leaders. Do they join in these attacks, or is it just the tip and the base of the pyramid? And that is an important point. Paul Ryan's a weasel, and he's a coward.
Yes.
But he hasn't been attacking the press on going after this. All he said is these are important issues, and as leader, I'm very concerned about these things.
Yes.
He's taking the Susan Collins troubled approach.
Well,
to
that's
politics.
a good idea. I mean,
But that's not the same thing as attacking the press, the way Trump and his
Right.
base are doing.
he could end up president in this, so he's cautious.
Well, we'll see. He also doesn't want to get dissed by intelligence, but we'll get to that one too.
Oh.
So, Jay Rosen, onward. When you can't tell what's going on, when listening harder generates more noise and attention equal confusion, then you know it's working. It's not that we won't see big investigations and spectacular exposés. We will. They'll serve as rocket fuel for the political divide. The assault on a common world of fact, the we create our own reality thing, of that, we are just at the beginning. It will get worse. You will know if I'm being alarmist when the first leak investigation comes, and it will come. Here's what I want to warn you about. Someone in government who can't live with what's happening will do what such people have always done, leak a big story to the press. I mean, government leaks are part and parcel of how you do business in Washington.
Yes.
Sometimes they're strategic, sometimes not. You pick which outlet you leak to. This is all part of doing business. And Rosen goes on to say, most of the stories will be burned as fuel in the culture war, adding to Trump's power rather than damaging him in any way. That means with his own base. Remember, the way his own base reacts is not the important thing. It's how everybody else reacts. It's a common mistake. You can't do that because Trump's base doesn't care. Trump's base is 25% of the population. I don't care that they don't care. The question is, what do the other 75% do? And that's always been the issue. Even on our side, progressives can't win an election by ourselves. We are not numerous enough. You have to recruit other people. This is a politics 101 thing that not everybody fully understood during the primary. But it's still true, and it's still true for Trump. So Rosen says most of these stories will be burned as fuel in the culture war, adding to Trump's power rather than damaging him in any way. But a leak will unfold that enrages Trump, just as what's happening now. He will demand a show of power, and the full force of the government will be brought to bear. He can't do that yet because he's not in government. DOJ guidelines, which aren't laws and norms in government that said tread carefully around the press, will vanish overnight. Picture Farenthold on trial for espionage. GOP leaders and office holders complicit. Culture war exploding around the trial. It's an obscene image. I hope it never happens. I'm not trying to be lurid or provocative, just descriptive of conditions in place now. I guess the point I want to underline most is the situation is way beyond just finding and publishing hard-hitting or critical stories. The problem isn't at the level of how to cover Trump, but how to recover conditions in which anything journalists do make a difference. I don't think we have any answers to that. One thing I do know, don't hurt us, we'll be good, won't save you. Winter is coming. And
Okay.
that's a Game of Thrones reference, but I have to point out, Winter is a cumin, and, Winter is Coming was not copyrighted by Game of Thrones. That phrase existed way before Game of Thrones ever existed, so did Winter, but it's a good one anyway.
Yes. I'm not even sure Game of Thrones exists.
Yeah, anyway. So that's Jay Rosen. And
Yes.
let me tell you a little bit about another tweet storm I have here. This one is from John Schindler. You can find it parked in the same place for David to follow along with us.
Schindler's List of tweets.
Schindler's List.
Okay.
John Schindler with a look at Donald Trump's war with the intelligence community. Now, John Schindler is NatSec columnist for The Observer, security consultant, and author and provocateur, formerly NSA, NavSec Guru, and NWC. So he's got a whole bunch of letters you don't know what they mean after his name, therefore he must be legitimate, right?
I guess.
He does have a blue check mark now.
Right. So does one of the Nazis now, by the way.
Yeah, the Spencer has been let back on Twitter because Trump won.
Yes. Well, appropriate then to see what Schindler has to say.
Right, so Schindler's List. Attention, Donald Trump. Going to war with the intelligence community is a truly colossally stupid thing to do per this tweet storm.
Yeah, well, okay.
I've been telling you for years, especially the last few months, that the Kremlin is behind WikiLeaks. Now the IC, its intelligence community, is saying so openly. Big deal. IC has hard proof at TS plus level.
Top secret?
Yeah. That Moscow used WikiLeaks to hurt Hillary and help Trump in 2016. These are facts that will not go away. The investigation demanded by Congress will reveal what we already know. Putin wanted U.S. political chaos and, if possible, a Trump win. Team Trump now has to decide to go along with the investigation of Russian interference or fight it, and seems they have chosen the latter. Publicly attacking the intelligence community as Trump has done will end very badly for Don. Remember what happened when Hillary attacked the spooks? Have you forgotten about Emailgate already? Real Donald Trump? Mocking the IC in public will result in big things you won't like. The intelligence community dislikes you intensely and they hate Flynn. That's General Flynn, who is disliked for a variety of reasons. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. He's admired for his ability to pull things together, but not for his ability to ground them in reality.
Okay. Well, he processed
I
the
speak in the Atlantic about how he functioned well if he had a bunch of people around him who would rein him in when he got too way out.
Oh, yeah.
But as a Director of National Intelligence in his top job, he didn't have that, and he was a disaster. Whereas if he was a lower-level person surrounded on a team by people who could do this, he actually functioned very well because he could see connections other people couldn't see.
Yes.
Sometimes they're true, sometimes they're not true. You need people around you to tell you, no, that one's not true. Anyway, they hate Flynn. The spooks have much more on you than they had on Hillary. This is a huge mistake. The only way Trump can make the issue of Russian interference worse is by impugning American intelligence, which Don just did. Get popcorn. The intelligence community knows the full picture of what happened this year. They're not happy with you, Trump. You have the weekend to walk it back. If Don won't walk back his foolish attack, which he didn't, by the way, watch for leaked terms like KGB, FSB, SVR, Kompromat, Mogilevich, or Organizacja.
Yeah, I'll watch for that.
Watch for those.
It will stand out. I will say, what is this gibberish?
So this is Russian intelligence planting stuff on other people and then accusing them.
Yes. I have an
Planting
article.
child porn and then say, look, that guy is involved in child porn. Take him out.
That was the hot one over the weekend. Several examples of that actually happening. And by the way, an early call on the Kagro in the Morning program. I recall that from a long time. We weren't talking about the Russians per se, but just the danger of that particular accusation in the digital context and how easy it is to simply say that was found and confiscate everybody's everything, and basically no one comes to anybody's defense who's been accused of possessing child pornography, and nobody ever asks to see the evidence either, because who wants to see it?
So there's a fellow named Grudge on Twitter, and he rounded up known Trump-Russia ties. It's 38 tweets long. I'm not going to read them all.
I count him as Team KITM.
Yeah, there you go. And I totally agree with you. Let me see if I can try and remember all the blatant Russia-Trump things that are out there. I'll just read you a few. Right after sanctions imposed, Trump brings one of his gross pageants to Russia. While there, he brags of his relationship with Putin in an interview. LA Times reported he sought and got money from Russian investigators for several projects, including a Soho hotel, included money from a notorious criminal, money laundering op called Bayrock. They funded Trump projects around the globe. Dom Jr. said Russians make up a pretty disproportionate cross-section of a lot of our assets at a real estate conference, hiring Manafort. Just to give you an example, it goes on and on and on. So the links are fairly clear. So on the one hand, you have links to Russia on the one hand, and on the other hand, you have these accusations by intelligence community, which Trump says, no, they're not true. And so you look at him and you say the guy is compromised. And one of the many, many conflicts of interest that are going to be the major issue, and the biggest reason, I think, that not the biggest reason, but the key, I think, to opposing Trump has to be on things like policy. We know he's a jerk and an a-hole, but people understood that and voted for him anyway. So that is a dead end in terms of trying to say this is why he shouldn't be there. What we have to focus on is policy. And one of the policies that's really important is this Russian connection. I say that because there's a lot more evidence that Comey threw the election to Trump over Clinton than there is that the Russians did. But the fact that Russians are interfering and they desire to have Trump win.
Yes.
And that they tried is a bigger political story, even though from an analysis point of view, Comey is the reason why Clinton didn't win. Not just me saying that. Nate Silver and the 538 crew have a story about that over the weekend. How much did Comey hurt Clinton's chances? Is it too late for his second letter to help her? This was written on November 6th. And the fact of the matter is, he was tweeting this around just yesterday.
Yeah.
With tweets that said things like, for example, I'll put it like this: Clinton would almost certainly be president-elect if the election had been held on October 27th, the day before Comey led her. It's becoming conventional wisdom that Comey is the thing that really swung the election, which isn't to say it's the only thing.
Right.
You can look at her and look, she had flaws. You can look at her and say she wasn't likable enough, even though he was less liked. You can look at her and say she didn't park enough of her time in Wisconsin and Michigan, even though she parked plenty of time in Pennsylvania and North Carolina and still didn't win. You can say all of those things. They would all be true, and without Comey, they wouldn't matter. You could also look at it and say, it's true that Comey was the big thing here, but had it not been set up by years in advance programming to accept that Clinton was corrupt, then Comey wouldn't have mattered as much. Anyway you slice it, Comey was a really big deal. Not so clear that the Russian intervention, including WikiLeaks, was as big a deal, maybe, but there isn't as much hard evidence as there is for what Comey did, including the late deciders going for Trump. But from a political perspective, having another country interfere with your election intentionally and then succeeding is huge political news, and that's why the intelligence stuff is getting way more coverage than Comey.
Yes, and not only intervening in our elections, or interfering, I melded the two words there. So intervening, and I might as well call it that. It makes much more sense. But,
Intergaslighting.
Other intelligence agencies around the world are becoming pretty certain that it's happening in other countries, sometimes in their own, sometimes in others. Mm-hmm. And now everybody taking a second look at the Brexit voting and people watching the French election and worried about an upcoming German election and, all sorts of issues popping up all over the globe, really. And just sort of taking a bigger perspective of it. I mean, if there were to, in fact, somehow be found to have influenced the British voting and were able to push, say, Le Pen across the line in France, that would make for an interesting set of United Nations Security Council meetings.
Wouldn't it? And, again, I'm going to have to end this relatively on time, which is to say early. We got another winter mix here, so I got to be careful about the roads going in.
Yes, be careful.
You look at Capone and you say, the guy's a murderer. And the rational people will say, I know, but we're going to have to get him on tax evasion. We can't get him on murder. I know he's a murderer. I can't prove he's a murderer, but I can prove that he's evading his taxes. So that's what we're going to get him on. I know that Comey was the big factor in the election, but we're going to have to go with Russian intel here because, firstly, it's a bigger picture. It's more important than just Trump alone.
Yes.
And it is something that's going to have legs.
I agree. I mean, it really has taken off, and it occurred to me, over the weekend as I kept thinking about it. It's so, like I said, strange and uncomfortable to find myself saying, Russians, but it might be the vehicle.
I'll give you another. I'll give you another that's going to make you uncomfortable.
Oh, good.
All right, and that is the image of the two towers on 9/11 exploding in flame, with the caption, "This is what happens when presidents don't pay attention to intelligence briefings."
Yep.
Now, I don't like the idea of 9/11 being politicized, but this is right on the money. What do you do with that? That's going to make you uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's true.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't even know. And this is also, I saw a lot over the weekend, and this would apply to that interpretation of 9/11 and security briefings too. At a certain level, it exceeds even the ability of any particular group of partisans to contain it as an attack. It's an overarching concern that spans party, and I guess.
I'm sending you a tweet, just the link to it so you can take a quick peek.
All right.
Just to make you uncomfortable.
All right, yay.
But it's important.
Yeah, okay, right. Well, didn't Oliver Willis ran a headline that was, well, a little less direct, I think, but same sort of thing that Trump was echoing Bush in his opting to ignore presidential daily briefings. Yeah,
and we know what happens when that occurs. So let's have a little perspective on this. And one of the best people to bring perspective, this is in my pundit roundup, is a piece, and I'm sure there's going to be a number of ongoing pieces just like it, from your friend and mine, Marcy Wheeler, Empty Wheel, who happens to be a bit of a national security expert. Not a bit, but quite an expert. And she's got a post here called The Evidence to Prove the Russian Hack, just to put things in perspective, a quick list.
All right.
This is Wheeler's list. As I see it, intelligence on all of the following are necessary to substantiate some of the claims about Russian tampering in this year's election. 1. FSB-related hackers hacked the DNC. 2. GRU-related hackers attacked the DNC. We have to look up all these letters. Specific groups attached to Russia. Russian state actors hacked Podesta's emails. Russian state actors hacked related targets, including Colin Powell and some Republican sites. Russian state actors hacked the RNC. Russian state actors released information from DNC and DCCC, the CCC, via Guccifer 2.0. Russian state actors released information via DC Leaks. Russian state actors or someone acting on its behest passed information to WikiLeaks. The motive explaining why WikiLeaks released the DNC and Podesta emails. Russian state actors probed voter registration databases. Russian state actors used bots and fake stories to make information more damaging and magnify its effects. Moldavia. Moldavia. The level at which all Russian state actors' actions were directed and approved, the motive behind the actions, and the degree to which Russia's efforts were successful or primary in leading to Hillary's defeat. Now, that last one is not necessarily as important. Their intent to do so isn't going to be separated from whether they succeeded or not. In other words, it may have been, as I said, it may have been Comey that swung the election. The fact that they tried is important. This didn't have to be the thing that defeated Hillary. And Marcy goes into this in more detail and will be in the next few days, and that's why I'm suggesting following her on Twitter and on her blog.
I will.
Is emptywheel.com.
You should.
Emptywheel.net, excuse me. I explain all of these in more detail below. For what it's worth, she says, I think the strong publicly available information to prove 3, 4, 7, and 11. Weaker but substantial information to support 2. It has always been the case the evidence is weakest at point 6 and 8. Point 6 is Russian state actors released information via Guccifer, and Russian state actors or someone acting on its behest passed information to WikiLeaks. So the intelligence community is fairly convinced that WikiLeaks got their data from Russia. Marcy's pointing out there's not a lot of proof for that. The funny thing is, watching the Trump campaign try to spin this as, well, how can you believe sources like the 17 Intelligence Agency when they won't tell you who their initial sources are? Well, it's the intelligence community. It doesn't work that way. It's not like the newspapers.
Yeah, I mean that's
you tell the sources, they die. So you don't.
Right.
Well, therefore it doesn't count. We can't believe it because we don't know who said it. Fine. You can make that argument. They are making that argument. Gaslighting.
Yes. Well, yes, some of it certainly is. I mean, there is the legitimate truth to it that you never do get to find out who the sources are. So it could be anybody, could be made up, etc. Although that's traditionally been a problem with intelligence services. That doesn't make it any better, and it also doesn't make it any less true. But we
know somebody stole all this stuff. We know somebody publicized it. We are fairly certain they did it in order to hurt Clinton's campaign. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to connect the dots in a different way, the fact is somebody was interfering. And the fact that it's Russia makes it a big, huge story. The fact the intelligence community is convinced that it was Russia makes it a big, huge story. Yes. But it'd be a story regardless.
I would hope so.
And you wrote it up for the election. So that's just tying all of this together and just trying to make the point that there's a lot here, and for those of us on the left, it's going to be a little uncomfortable because we're going to be in the position of saying, okay, so now all of a sudden we're backing the FBI and the CIA? Not exactly. But information is information. And from a political perspective, you cannot ignore this any more than you can ignore photos of the 9/11 towers coming down in context with ignoring intelligence briefings. You just can't. This is going to be part and parcel of the discussion. You can't have the discussion entirely on your own terms. If you did, you'd still be chasing Capone for murder.
I guess
and he'd still be off.
But what about your principles? Don't you want to stand up for your principles and get them on murder?
You mean PLES? I want all of those actors to go to jail.
Oh.
Do you mean principals, like, you want to just tell the truth and only the truth? Well, we can talk about Comey because he threw the election.
Okay.
But then people say, it's just sour grapes. No, actually, it's analysis.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of shades of nuance to the whole thing. And, one of the I don't think there's any. Is there anybody that says, meh, forget the whole thing, propaganda, news, whatever.
But that's the thing. That's where Comey will lead you. Whereas the Russian discussion is going to lead to a completely different place. How do we know? We already have a joint statement from Graham, McCain, Schumer, and Reid that Congress needs to investigate this.
Oh.
Joint statements like that from people on both sides of the aisle are pretty rare these days.
True.
And if you're looking at the current majority before January 20th,
third,
if all the Democrats and those guys, say you got to investigate, you have a majority.
Yeah. Yes, actually. So, if
assuming
the Republicans have to come up with another one.
Republicans need to come up with another one, but flake. Unless,
of course, they do it before January 20th.
That's what I'm saying. Before January 20th.
Okay.
After January 20th, the number's different.
That's true.
But you do it now, then it's going to be hard to stop. And with all of the stories going on the last 4 days, it's going to be hard to stop. So this is politically potent. Some of my friends on the right are decrying the fact that all of a sudden the Democrats want to do this politically potent thing, so therefore it must be, politically motivated. Yeah. Fine.
I'm not certain what that's supposed to mean.
I'm terribly sorry that this actual thing that people are going after turns out to be politically potent. Not my fault. I'm over it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to pay attention to the white working class intelligence workers.
Especially in New York at the FBI. So, if you really want to get to the bottom of it, fine. Just subpoena Rudy Giuliani and let us grill him about what he actually knew and when he knew it.
And why he bailed.
So with that, I'll just leave you with the fact that there's going to be a lot of discomfort in actually looking to see what happened, because people would like to think that everything just in the end always goes smoothly, and a lot of this is just belly aching from people who lost. It ain't. It's big. There's going to be lots of stories about it, and we'll come back tomorrow and talk about it some more.
Okay. I'm happy to do that.
All right. Then there's always policy,
not yet.
Like how healthcare is getting gutted and all that. But we'll do that too. Take care.
Okay.
This is my friend David Waldman on the show with his own broadcast here. It's called Kagro in the Morning. He lets me on in the morning sometimes to chat with him and interrupt him and argue with him. And sometimes Armando comes on and we argue with Armando too. Always fun. And we thank you all for listening. It's really it's fun for us. And hopefully everybody gets something out of it. All of the links that we were talking about today are at the Pundit Roundup this morning at Daily Kos, and any that we missed, well, they'll be in Scott Anderson's Roundup later on Daily Kos when in the afternoon he sums up what we said on the show. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Let's do that. Thanks very much, Greg.
Okay,
Appreciate
take
having
care.
me back. Drive safely. All right. Just sort of interesting, a tweet that went by that I can't see the picture closely enough, and it looks like it's a photo of a chart, a photo of a graph in somebody's hand that they were taking a picture of. And it's weird, it caught my eye because the thumb on the page has distorted the graph. But so I can't see the numbers for you. And it comes from Matt K. Lewis, who I think is a bit of a loon, but hey, why not? And retweeted by Anna Marie Cox is how it got into my feed. And, well, it says this: wow, white evangelicals had a huge shift since 2011 in regards to overlooking immoral acts of politicians. And it's hashtagged, I guess he's at a conference by this title, Faith Angle 16. I guess the 2016 Faith Angle. I'm not sure what that is. I don't care that much, but this is the chart. Let's see. The title is White Evangelicals Grew More Accepting of Politicians' Personal Indiscretions. And I can't, I couldn't enlarge the picture for whatever reason. Maybe if I try it this way and open it up separately. Yeah, here we go. Percent who say an elected official who commits an immoral act in their personal life can still behave ethically and fulfill their duties in their public and professional life. And it's as between 2011 and 2016. And they're asking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups. All Americans, white evangelical Protestants, white mainline Protestants, Catholics, and those unaffiliated, I guess, with any organized religion. The source here being PRRI/RNS, June 2011 survey, and the PRRI Brookings survey in October of 2016. And I guess that's supposed to show why evangelicals voted Trump, despite his insanity in terms of his ethical, personal behavior, his personal ethical behavior, personally unethical behavior. But I don't know. Well, I think that describes what they did. I don't know that it describes really, I don't know that the label that they attached to it is correct. In other words, the willingness of white evangelical Protestants to actually accept elected officials who commit immoral acts in their personal lives and their ability to actually serve. I think what it says is Republicans who say they're going to, enact our favored policy positions are okay if immoral. Democrats, not. But okay, so they cloak it in these terms. That's the question they ask, and this is how they answered. And I guess the big, huge shift is, as among all Americans, 44% in 2011 said an elected official who commits an immoral act in their personal life can still behave ethically and fulfill their duties in public and professional life. That now, in 2016, among all Americans, 61%. For unaffiliated, interestingly enough, unaffiliated voters in 2011, 63% of them said it was acceptable. They thought that they could serve in their public life. And it's down to only slightly, to 60%. That's more or less unchanged, but I mean, if you have to say something, point at the number 63, it's down to 60. Everybody else was up and up considerably. And right, the biggest jump is with white evangelical Protestants who 30% of them in 2011 agreed with the statement that an elected official who commits an immoral act in their personal life can still behave ethically and fulfill their duties in their public and professional lives. Went from 30% to 72%. So there you have it. Other groups, let's see, white mainline Protestants went from 38% to 60%. Catholics went from 42 to 58%. And as I said, unaffiliated voters actually dropped 63 down to 60. That is pretty remarkable, although, like I said, what's really being illustrated here is, did white evangelical Protestants vote Trump despite his sexual assaults and alleged child molestation? The answer is yes. So there you go. All right, well, I'll include that in the roundup, and you'll be able to marvel at it. And if you want, you can see the very corner of what I guess is Matt Lewis's left thumb. Very exciting for those of you who collect such items. I don't know, I'm making something up. Okay, let's find our way back to the flow of things over in Twitter so we don't miss out on anything, and there's been a lot. Let's see. By the way, with all of this discussion of Donald Trump and the Russian influence and et cetera, well, gee whiz, there's a lot happening. By the way, my biggest fear at the moment is that Joshua Warren will tweet another picture, an animated GIF of a puppet waving wildly and distract me for the rest of the day. Okay, let's see. Where was I in all this? Okay, let's dive back into all of what we've been provided. And I have a couple of notes to myself to follow up on some of the things that Greg brought up, but as he needs additional time to drive carefully today, I couldn't bring up while he was still here. But let's see. First, there was his mention of gaslighting, which was also a big topic over the weekend. And I read it, but I don't think I put it aside. But I think you probably all know where I'm going with this one. I did put it aside. Hooray. I'm organized here. Much discussion of gaslighting. Much discussion of Teen Vogue as the source for a great article on gaslighting. Then much discussion first about, wow, Teen Vogue is putting the rest of the media to shame, to which I said, wow, yeah, that's great. And then lots of comments like, hey, why do you think that the journalism in Teen Vogue would be any worse than it is anywhere else? I mean, they are, after all, professional journalists, just because I don't even know whether I assume, maybe I shouldn't, that the majority of the writers for Teen Vogue are women. I doubt that it's all of them, but maybe it's not the majority. But I think you would at first be justified in saying, hey, Teen Vogue, teens, first of all, not a group that makes you think, cogent political analysis. But of course there are teens who can provide it, and of course the people who are writing for Teen Vogue aren't teens, but they're supposed to be writing to teens, and you would think that they might want to focus on fluffier topics. But then again, the answer is no, teens, they sometimes have brains and they want to find out about things. Yeah, they care about other stuff too, and what a great place, by the way, to sneak in their education. No better place than a place that they come to willingly, Teen Vogue. But Vogue also not necessarily someplace that you would say cogent political analysis. But again, so a good counterpoint, well taken, that people point out, yeah, there's smart people who like stuff that has to do with fashion or even teens. And I don't think there was some pushback too that the fact that the author was a woman was somehow supposed to be needed pushback on, and I didn't really see that one as clearly. Of course, women can write cogently about these things. I don't think that was the attack. I think the surprise was Teen and Vogue and Teen Vogue. But, well, throughout the election, we kept going to Cracked magazine. So if we got over that, we can certainly get over Teen Vogue. Everyone was talking about this article. Well, first everyone was talking about the fact that it was in Teen Vogue, then that you shouldn't be talking about that fact. Then they read the article. Donald Trump is gaslighting America. And he is. And I also think he's lighting his farts. But that's not what we're talking about here. In this Scorched Earth op-ed, it says here in the subtitle, Lauren Duca takes on Trump's systematic attempts to destabilize the truth and weaken the foundations of American freedom. We've been over gaslighting. I think we all know exactly what we're talking about. We're perfectly comfortable with it as a shorthand reference. But this article was so widely shared in my Twitter feed and so widely discussed for so many different reasons that I think it's like a cultural touchstone, and if you don't have a familiarity with the article itself, you're going to miss something. So I'll share it with you. It's not even terribly long because she's actually a pretty good writer and makes her damn point and gets it over with already. And that's another great reason why Teen Vogue makes a great vehicle. I'm sure that the editors say, well, okay, I mean, certainly our audience wants this. But on the other hand, make it quick, and they have a point. And that's applicable to anybody. They're just more sensitive to it. Other, news weeklies and analysis magazines are like, oh, people want long. do the long thing. No, they don't. The CIA officially determined that Russia intervened in our election, and President-elect Donald Trump dismissed the story as if it were a piece of fake news. Loaded term. We understand that. Not the focus of this article, so we move on. These are the same people that said Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. His transition team wrote in a statement. Of course, time out. Important to note, it was noted by a lot of reporters that the statement from the transition team was unsigned. There wasn't any name assigned to, or assigned authorship in this, and it's meant to be, mysterious and speaking for the transition. It's not quite rising to the level of Donald Trump himself says this, or else they would have said so, but nobody wants to lay claim to it. It's for their purposes, a good line, but for the rest of us, the fact that it is unsigned means that you do not know whether the people who are saying it also believed that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Ordinarily, you would say, of course they didn't, because there's no chance that they would say such a thing if they did, because the hypocrisy would be overwhelming and they'd never be able to bring themselves to do it. But that's out the window now. At this point, standard operating procedure is, if you did believe it, say you didn't, and point the finger at others who didn't, and laugh at them saying that they did. So who knows what's happening. Anyway, that's what the transition statement said. It continued on to say the election ended a long time ago. In one of the biggest electoral college victories in history, it's now time to move on and make America great again. Lauren takes that on immediately. It wasn't one of the biggest electoral college victories in history. So presumably that's another red herring lie to distract from Trump, treating the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States like it's some rogue blogger, to be cast to the trolls. A foreign government's interference in our election is a threat to our freedom, and the president-elect's attempt to undermine the American people's access to that information undermines the very foundation upon which this country was built. It's also nothing new. By the way, as I'm reading this to myself and to you, does anyone know Lauren Duca and who she is? Does she write primarily for Teen Vogue? Or is she a freelance writer that writes in all sorts of places? I found it interesting at the beginning of the piece for them, the subheader to say in this scorched earth op-ed. It made me, for some reason, it put me in mind of that they were saying, this is a scorched earth op-ed, and it's so good we decided to run it in Teen Vogue, even though it was written and published originally elsewhere. But she does appear to, I don't know. They have the bio line for her leads to her Teen Vogue pieces, but I don't know whether she's an employee of Teen Vogue or as a freelance writer frequently published in Teen Vogue, and Teen Vogue is only interested in linking to her previous work for Teen Vogue. I don't know. If any of you are familiar with her background, I'd be interested to know. It doesn't change much about any of it, but I think it's worth knowing. Anyway, right, so she finished up that second strong paragraph by saying, the president-elect's attempts to undermine the American people's access to that information, i.e. the truth, undermines the very foundation upon which this country was built. It's also nothing new. Trump won the presidency by gaslight. His rise to power has awakened a force of bigotry by condoning and encouraging hatred, but also by normalizing deception. Civil rights are now on trial, though before we can fight to reassert the march toward equality, we must regain control of the truth. If that seems melodramatic, I would encourage you to dump a bucket of ice over your head while listening to Duel of the Fates. I would not. But Donald Trump is our president now. It's time to wake up. Gaslighting is a buzzy name for a terrifying strategy currently being used to weaken and blind the American electorate. We are collectively being treated like Bella Manningham in the 1938 Victorian thriller from which the term gaslight takes its name. In the play, Jack terrorizes his wife Bella into questioning her reality by blaming her for mischievously misplacing household items which he systematically hides. Doubting whether her perspective can be trusted, Bella clings to a single shred of evidence, the dimming of the gas lights that accompanies the late-night execution of Jack's trickery. The wavering flame is the one thing that holds her conviction in place as she wriggles free of her captor's control. To gaslight is to psychologically manipulate a person to the point where they question their own sanity, and that's precisely what Trump is doing to this country. He gained traction in the election by swearing off the lies of politicians while constantly contradicting himself, often without bothering to conceal the conflicts within his own sound bites. He lied to us over and over again and took all accusations of his falsehoods and spun them into evidence of bias. Jay Rosen told us exactly the same thing. At the hands of Trump, facts have become interchangeable with opinions, blinding us into arguing amongst ourselves as our very reality is called into question. There's a long list of receipts when it comes to Trump's lies. With the help of PolitiFact, clear-cut examples of deception include Trump saying that he watched thousands of people cheering on 9/11 in Jersey City. Police, of course, say there's no evidence of this. That the Mexican government forces immigrants into the U.S. No evidence for that. That there are 30 or 34 million immigrants in this country. There are 10 or 11 million, and I believe here they're speaking of undocumented immigrants. He has also said that he never supported the Iraq War. He told Howard Stern that he did. He said that the unemployment rate is as high as 42%. The highest reported rate is 16.4%. And he's also said that the U.S. is the highest taxed country in the world. Not true, based on any metric of consideration. That crime is on the rise. It's actually falling and has been for decades. And too many other things to list here because the whole tactic is to clog the drain with an indecipherable mass of toxic waste. The gaslighting part comes in when the fictions are disputed by the media and Trump doubles down on his lies before painting himself as a victim of unfair coverage, sometimes even threatening to revoke access. Trump has repeatedly attempted to undermine the press, including such well-respected publications as the New York Times, whatever. He has disseminated a wealth of unsubstantiated attacks on the media, though this baseless tweet from April pretty much sums it all up. How bad is the New York Times? The most inaccurate coverage, constantly, always trying to belittle. Paper has lost its way. As a candidate, Trump's gaslighting was manipulative. As president-elect, it is a deliberate attempt to destabilize journalism as a check on the power of government. To be clear, the us here is everyone living under Trump. It's radical progressives, hardline Republicans, and Jill Stein's weird cousin, whoever that might be. The President of the United States cannot be lying to the American electorate with zero accountability. The threat of deception is not a partisan issue. Trump took advantage of the things that divide this country, pitting us against one another, while lying his way to the Oval Office. Yes, everything is painfully clear in hindsight, but let's make sure Trump's win was the LASIK eye surgery we all so desperately needed. The good news about this boiling frog scenario, there are an awful lot of catchphrases and references to other cultural touchstones in here, which is probably what makes this one an important one too. You know the boiling frog scenario. The good news about this boiling frog scenario is that we're not boiling yet. Trump is not going to stop playing with the burner until America realizes that the temperature is too high. It's on every single one of us to stop pretending it's always been so hot in here. There are things you can and should be doing to turn your unrest into action, but first, let's empower ourselves with information. Insist on fact-checking every Trump statement you read, every headline you share, or even relay to a friend over coffee. If you find factual inaccuracies in an article, send an email to the editor and explain how things should have been clearer. Inform yourself what outlets are trustworthy and which aren't. If you need extra help, seek out a browser extension that flags misleading sites, or print out a list of fake outlets, such as the one by communications professor Melissa Zimdars, herein linked, and tape it to your laptop. Does everybody know, by the way, about the browser extensions that flag misleading sites? I can well imagine what they do, but I don't know if I know the names of any, and perhaps we ought to collect some, share some, along with some basic instructions on how you might install one in case you are less than supercomputer literate. Anyway, Moving on, do a thorough search before believing the agenda Trump distributes on Twitter. Refuse to accept information simply because it is fed to you, and don't be afraid to ask questions. That is how the base level of what is that is now the base level of what is required of all Americans. You used to be able to assume it, now you can't, I would add. If facts become a point of debate, the very definition of freedom will be called into question. That is flighty, but true. It will be far easier to take on Trump's words when there is no question of what he's said or whether he means it. Regardless of your beliefs, we must all insist on that level of transparency. Trump is no longer some reality TV clown who used to fire people on The Apprentice, though he's also that. He is the President of the United States. Soon. The road ahead is a treacherous one. There are unprecedented amounts of ugliness to untangle, from deciding whether our president can be an admitted sexual predator to figuring out how to stop him from threatening the sovereignty of an entire religion. It's incredible that any of these things could seem like a distraction from a greater peril, or be only the cherry-picked issues in a seemingly unending list of gaffes, but the gas lights are flickering. When defending each of the identities in danger of being further marginalized, we must remember the thing that binds this pig-headed hydra together. As we spin our newfound rage into action, it is imperative to remember, across identities and across the aisle, as a country and as individuals, we have nothing without the truth. So, what do you make of that? That's, well, it was widely shared, widely read, widely commented upon, and so I felt it was important to share with everybody, and glad I was able to do that. If you haven't read it, well, you're done now. You've got it in your database, as it were. The other thing that I took note of from Greg's segment, I have, in fact, put aside the Atlantic piece on Mike Flynn. That is the Making Sense of Mike Flynn piece here, which I'll open up. And I don't think that this was the source of this comment. And this one I'll have to dig up, and I'm trying to make note to myself to do that, because it's difficult to do. By the end of the show, the brain's fried, and I don't remember such things. But Greg mentioned to you that this piece, and I'm sort of scan it for length here. It doesn't look like it's a great, that it's that huge, unless they do lay things out a little bit weird here. Okay. So sometimes these arrows, next and previous arrows that the Atlantic uses in the gutters of the page, I didn't know whether that was their funky way of saying that there were more pages of the article, or whether that was the next article in the issue. But as it turns out, it doesn't look like a terribly long piece, so we'll just read it. It's Yoni Applebaum's piece here in the Atlantic, Making Sense of Mike Flynn. Why did Trump's choice for National Security Advisor perform so well in the war on terror, only to find himself forced out of the Defense Intelligence Agency? And there was a previous comment offered up somewhere along the line on Twitter, which I'll have to dig up, which makes for interesting additional context. I'll talk about that one afterwards. But quickly here, how does a man like retired Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, who spent his life sifting through information and parsing reports, separating rumor and innuendo from actionable intelligence, come to promote conspiracy theories on social media? Flynn and his son, both, of course, very prominent sharers of the Comet Pizza nonsense, which is an awfully stupid conspiracy theory to have landed on, to pick out from the sea of conspiracy theories as true for somebody who's supposed to have abilities to perform a super serious job. I mean, that I call the whole thing into question over that. But okay, let's read on. Perhaps it's less Flynn who's changed than the circumstances in which he finds himself. That might explain it. Thriving in some roles and flailing in others. think about John Nash in that context. I mean, there's a different cause and perhaps different underlying cause. We don't know. I got no idea what medically how Mike Flynn checks out. But thinking of John Nash and the way he was portrayed in A Beautiful Mind, and how under certain circumstances, the kind of mind that has the ability to make breakthrough discoveries in terms of just seeing something from the right perspective, whether constantly or in a glimmering moment of clarity or what have you, that's an enormously important ability, particularly in unraveling complex networks like would be required in the intelligence fight against terrorism, worldwide, dispersed, diffuse, loosely organized by the internet of all things. So it would be an enormously important skill to have. It's just not necessarily the person you want at the top of the pyramid making all the decisions, right? That ability, that piercing ability, perhaps needs a check once in a while to say, well, you see patterns where others don't, but you also see patterns where there aren't any, and it's not a matter of, well, you see patterns that others simply can't every single time. Sometimes the pattern you see isn't real, right? In diagnostic testing, there's a basic distinction, Applebaum continues here, between sensitivity, or the ability to identify positive results, and specificity, the ability to exclude negative ones. A test with high specificity may avoid generating false positives, but at the price of missing many diagnoses. One with high sensitivity may catch those tricky diagnoses, but also generate false positives along the way. Some people seem to sift through information with high sensitivity, but low specificity, spotting connections that others can't, and perhaps some that aren't even there. Better explanation of that. Take, for example, Ray Stanford, the Maryland man who, as the Washington Post memorably put it, sees things other people don't. Stanford found real fossilized dinosaur footprints where scientists said they couldn't be, and where others saw only dimpled rocks, hundreds of them. His work has rewritten scientific understanding of dinosaurs on the East Coast, but that's not all he sees. His real passion, it turns out, is spotting UFOs. His first encounter came in 1954. Then, and by the way, consider that, interestingly enough, right? Okay, so you take him at his word when it comes to fossilized dinosaur trace evidence, right? You don't maybe take him at his word when it comes to UFOs. Okay, fine, right? Well, earlier we were discussing the apparent inherent paradox, I guess, in saying I believe the intelligence communities on Russian interference in the elections, but then again, these are the same people who thought that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. By the way, of course, pointed out quite correctly by many observers more closely attuned to these things than I am, that the CIA in particular, institutionally wasn't really interested in making claims about Saddam Hussein and his possible possession of weapons of mass destruction. That really was on Bush administration officials, including Dick Cheney, who were interested in culling that conclusion from raw intelligence that hadn't been vetted and hadn't been checked, and there wasn't the opportunity to say you may be seeing things that don't exist, or pulling up information that doesn't mean what you think it does, or manufactured information that never was real in the first place, or you manufactured it. And stovepiping, as they said, I think the phrase that Jane Meyer used when she was writing about it, stovepiping that information straight up to the top without sifting it through the layers of the CIA that are designed to, enhance the specificity in the analysis, right? Anyway, there's more, of course, but I just wanted to kind of point that out. Like, yeah, you could have been wrong about weapons of mass destruction and still be right about Russian interference, though you would have a lot more confidence in them, perhaps, if they had been right the first time. But then again, it is an important point. The reality of it is that the CIA would not, on its own, have been particularly comfortable saying, yeah, our conclusion is Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. They didn't. So that's there's a million things wrong with that transition statement. But okay, back to Applebaum's making sense of Mike Flynn. There's the legendary investigative reporter Seymour Hersh. Another good example. From the My Lai massacre to Project Jennifer, Hersh has assembled a shelf full of journalistic prizes by unearthing secrets, documenting cover-ups, and breaking stories that others dismissed as too crazy to be true. But critics allege that some of his work, particularly stories written without the fact-checking apparatus of The New Yorker, like his biography of JFK or his investigation of the killing of Osama bin Laden, shows excessive credulousness. Much of Flynn's military career was equally brilliant and distinguished. As director of intelligence for the military's Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC, remember that, he fearlessly challenged convention. As Dana Priest has reported, when JSOC staged raids, Flynn had personnel gather scraps of intelligence, cell phone numbers, addresses, pocket trash. They relayed what they found back to Flynn and his analysts, who took these disparate data points and drew connections among them, spotting patterns and creating actionable intelligence. JSOC began rolling up networks it hadn't been able to crack. But there was another ingredient, equally crucial to Flynn's success. General Stanley McChrystal, then Flynn's boss, harnessed his remarkable capacity for drawing connections while working to contain it. Priest reported, he boxed him in. Someone who had worked with both men told me last week, by encouraging Flynn to keep his outbursts in check and surrounding him with subordinates who would challenge the unsubstantiated theories he tended to indulge. That reporting suggests that McChrystal saw the extraordinary value in Flynn's sensitivity, recognizing that Flynn might spot things others would miss, so long as he was embedded in a system that could supplement it with specificity, knocking down suppositions and leaving only the solid claims standing. But, as the New York Times wrote, once Flynn found himself in command of the Defense Intelligence Agency, his sensitivity was no longer balanced by specificity. There was no one to steer him away from false positives. And here are the quote from the New York Times. His dubious assertions are so common that when he ran the Defense Intelligence Agency, subordinates came up with a name for the phenomenon. They called them Flynn facts. And I wonder whether it wasn't the New York Times that was also the source of the other thing that I was thinking of about Flynn, which was, I thought, a comment on his new role that he would be stepping into in a Trump administration as National Security Advisor, that he had gathered top prospective staff. And again, I might be wrong about the context. This might have been what he did at DIA, and is a past tense thing. I guess we could take a look at the Times article herein quoted and see if it's not. But the thing I read about him recently was that he had brought in top staff and told them basically the worst possible thing that a guy who's been explained to you this way could possibly do, which is to say, listen, staff, the thing you need to know about me is I'm always right. And if you find yourself in disagreement with me, I will take that to mean that you were wrong, which is a nutso thing for almost anybody to say to their staff, because why have a staff at all? But particularly dangerous in a game where the whole thing is about challenging assumptions all the way along and making sure that you are distilling out of it the most rock-solid intelligence and presenting it as such and say, this has been vetted, this has been tested, here are the counterpoints. There's countervailing arguments, countervailing evidence, but we still think it stands up in the face of that evidence versus the stovepiping stuff, which I'm sure, has a role to play in all of this, but it needs to be identified as different in kind when it's presented, with lots of caveats along the way. So, what about these things and these Flynn facts? The follow-up here. Flynn soon found himself embroiled in controversy, and he was forced out of the DIA a year early. His allies blamed an intransigent bureaucracy resistant to his efforts at reform. That sounds familiar. It's the sort of thing that people like that blame for their inability to work within the system all the time. His critics tell a different story, describing a man who brooked little dissent and indulged in conspiratorial thinking. Sources told the New York Times about one such incident after the Benghazi attack. Iran had a role in the attack, he told them. Now, he added, it was their job to prove it, and, by implication, to show that the White House was wrong about what had led to the attack. Despite Flynn's insistence, solid evidence tying Iran to the attacks never surfaced. To his critics, the episode illustrated a tendency to connect dots to form patterns that don't exist. Flynn himself has perhaps reinforced that case by repeatedly claiming to have been pushed out over his views on radical Islam, despite a lack of evidence to support that claim. Flynn doesn't lack for defenders who dismiss such attacks. Jason Chris Houck, H-O-W-K, who worked with him in Afghanistan, described him as an eager listener who saw quickly flaws in plans and questioned ideas that were weak. Okay. But Sarah Chase, who also worked with Flynn in Afghanistan, described him to the Times as, quote, a very talented information gatherer whose thinking process is not sufficiently analytical to test some streams against others and make sense of it or draw consistent conclusions. Now, Flynn has been tapped to serve as President-elect Donald Trump's national security advisor, a position in which he'll be charged with coordinating the nation's complicated and competing national security agencies, in addition to overseeing his own staff of hundreds. Flynn's advocates point to his distinguished service as evidence he's equal to the job, and his critics insist that his recent conspiratorial tweets prove he's unsuited to the role. I land on the latter. But the question isn't whether Flynn is the right choice, but whether Trump will scope and define his job in the right way, enabling him to succeed. After all, that would be the job of an effective leader and manager. But Donald Trump really isn't that either. I mean, that's what's supposed to come to the White House when you trust a businessman and try to run government like a business. It's just he's not very good at business. He's born rich and stayed rich, and that's nice, but, I don't think anybody has seen any outstanding managerial talent in him. Anyway, at JSOC, he reported to a commander who apparently demanded that he discipline his outbursts and empowered his subordinates to rigorously test his ideas. He performed brilliantly. I know that's uncomfortable, but if you do a great job, you should be happy with that. But, okay, he wants to be free to do his own thing all the time. Maybe that's just not the way you work best. That's a difficult thing to swallow. Let's conclude here. At the DIA, by contrast, he ran his own show and reportedly demanded that his subordinates validate his ideas. He was promptly forced out. One way to read Flynn's record is as a reminder that our greatest assets are often also our greatest flaws, and it's the circumstances in which we're placed that enable success or trigger failure. I think that's quite brilliant. Well done. And a good addition to the background analysis. Let's see. I want to catch up on some comments that have been made and tagged for our KITM hashtag line here. A good way to make sure these things hang around long enough to be noticed and discussed on the air. Gideon asking, do CIA people need to be grounded? Somebody does. Not all of them necessarily have to be grounded in exactly the same way, and I suppose a diversity of different kinds of grounding and different layers of checking. Like Applebaum here mentioned in the beginning of the piece, I mean, there's pluses and minuses to it, but I guess the levels of bureaucracy that go into vetting intelligence at the CIA, I'm sure occasionally causes important signs to be missed by, as a result of intransigent bureaucracy, not being willing to see the pattern that the brilliant analyst sees. I'm sure that happens all the time, that there are lower-level CIA analysts who say, I know I'm right here, but they just won't buy my story. The president needs to know this, and it's on you if you try and prevent him from hearing about it. Okay, I mean, I'm sure those arguments happen all the time, and I'm sure that they do occasionally result in higher-ups who have to brief the principals here. Surely every once in a while they say, well, if they find an opening in the briefing, questions that are being asked, there is another theory. I don't put a great deal of stock in it, but it's out there, kind of thing. I don't know. Gideon, now, are you kidding me? Surely there's a place for fun in the CIA. I'm sure there's plenty of fun being had in the CIA. Yes, but when it comes to, of course, creating the briefing products, I'm okay taking most of the fun out of that. I'm not sure where you're going with this one. Twister Cat, let's see, saying Mitch McConnell live talking Russia. I'm not even certain what that. Well, Mitch McConnell live talking. Oh, he's on live somewhere talking about Russia. There we go. I figured it out. I'm not sure what he's saying, but I don't know if I care what Mitch McConnell has. I mean, it's interesting that he's talking about it. That means he's been moved to discuss it. For all the effort he put into insisting that he would not discuss Donald Trump, I guess he's still not comfortable getting to a place where he says, I refuse to answer questions about Russia as well. I think that would be too suspect for him to just shut down that many avenues of inquiry. Let's see, Josh Warren. Let's see, what have you got here? Watch for your KITM downloads from Israel to increase over the next 3 weeks. KITM tends to be my lifeline while abroad. Oh, okay. So I guess that means you'll be doing that from, have a good time in Israel. Say hi. I don't know. Okay. Interesting. I'll keep an eye on about that one. Gideon following up again, by the way, saying it's hard to motivate people without an element of fun. Well, that's true. I'd be happy with wear your favorite NFL team jersey to work day or crazy hat day. That seems to be, it's enough for our school kids. It's pajama day for one of my kids today. And that should be good enough for the CIA as well. There's no reason why. I'm sure there's some like cool spy pajamas out there that you can bring with you. Laura, who tweets as Lowra, like LOWRHA. That's the actual Twitter handle, but username Laura. Harkening back to the white evangelical stuff. The white evangelicals more okay with scandal now because Obama had none and everything he does is evil. That's an interesting interpretation of it. It's probably largely true. I mean, I think you probably agree that at bottom they were just like, well, we're outcome-oriented people here. I wanted Trump to win. He's a child molester. I'm okay with it. I wouldn't have him babysit my kids, but I'm sure he'll be fine ensconced in the White House. There's people minding him all the time. It's hard to get private time to, who knows. Anyway, I assume that they're just being practical-minded here. When they don't want Obama and he won't give them any immorality to point to, they just make the immorality up or say other people around him are immoral and he won't do anything about it. So, they decide where they want to be politically. I think you probably agree with that. If you don't, let me know. And thank you for listening and contributing to the show. I look forward to having your name to call frequently. Any help I can get, any crutch from all the rest of you that helps me limp through the show. All right. We're getting there, though. It's 10:30, so we're filling up a show regardless. And there's plenty more where that came from. Let's see. So some of these things I put aside that are Twitter remarks. The headline doesn't show up, so it's hard to tell what they were. But by the way, yes, Grudge's tweet storm. The handle is grudging1, like he's the guy who's grudging. Grudging numeral 1. His tweet storm was already in pocket, so I'm glad that Greg caught us up on that one. There's a few others, and I'm trying to see where should we go with this one. Boy, a couple of different directions. Here's what I'll do. I'm going to share something that I think is a good idea. How about that? And it comes from Vox. More than that, it comes from Matthew Iglesias, who's admittedly full of good ideas, but it's so much so that it becomes annoying. Another good idea from Iglesias. Screw that guy. I don't want to read any more good ideas from him. But Amanda Marcotte, I saw retweeting this one today, along with the statement that, goddamn, this is a good idea. And that made me say, goddamn, she just said goddamn, and it's like 7 a.m. What is this good idea? Let's take a look at it. And I don't know, I'll throw it out there because why not? And maybe one day it'll happen and you'll say, wow, I heard that first on Kagro in the morning. And I'll remind you, yeah, but Matt Iglesias said it, not me. Doesn't matter. Now we're all smart because we can read stuff. Ready? Let's relocate a bunch of government agencies to the Midwest. Did you see this? I like this idea for a number of reasons, not the least of which is get all these people out of my way on the roads. Seriously. And that's actually part of the discussion. Time to shift economic activity from the overcrowded coast to places that need more of it. It's an economic idea as well as a political one, but it's got huge political implications. America's post-industrial Midwest is far from being the country's poorest region. To find the direst economic conditions in the United States, one generally has to look toward Appalachia, the Mississippi Delta region, the Rio Grande Valley, and a smattering of heavily Native American counties in the Southwest and Great Plains. What the Midwest's recent economic struggles bring, however, is not just large-scale political salience, but a particular kind of fixability. Well, offhandedly anyway. We'll see how the proposal stacks up in the future. It ought to be vetted, I think, right? The poorest places in the United States have been poor for a very long time and lack the basic infrastructure of prosperity, but that's not true in the Midwest, where cities were thriving 2 generations ago and where an enormous amount of infrastructure is in place. Midwestern states have acclaimed public university systems, airports that are large enough to serve as major hubs, and cities whose cultural legacies include Major League pro sports teams, acclaimed museums, symphonies, theaters, and other amenities of big city living. Right? There's a potential for heartland elites. And they exist, of course, but there's potential for more of them and for more coastal elites to move into the interior of the country and say, there's plenty of stuff to do here. It's not just New York and San Francisco anymore. Always been true, of course. Chicago, huge example. Huge. And there are many more. But he's right. 2 generations ago, many more smaller scale hubs of upscale urban living all over the country. And yeah, those are cities in decline and something can be done about it. Industrial decline has left these cities overbuilt, though, with shrunken populations that struggle to support the legacy infrastructure, and the infrastructure's decline tends to only beget further regional decline. At the same time, America's major coastal cities are overcrowded. They suffer from endemic housing scarcity, yes, massive traffic congestion, yes, personal there, and a profound small c political conservatism that prevents them from making the kind of regulatory changes that would allow them to build the new housing and infrastructure they need. Excess population that can't be absorbed by the coasts tends to bounce to the growth-friendly cities of the Sun Belt that need to build anew what Milwaukee, Detroit, and Cleveland already have in terms of infrastructure and amenities. Could use some updating, but that's all in the works anyway, or it's supposed to be. A sensible approach would be for the federal government to take the lead in rebalancing America's allocation of population and resources by taking a good hard look at whether so much federal activity needs to be concentrated in Washington, D.C. and its suburbs. Moving agencies out of the D.C. area to the Midwest would obviously cause some short-term disruptions. All the people who work there, right? But in the long run, relocated agencies' employees would enjoy cheaper houses, shorter commutes, and a higher standard of living, while Midwestern communities would see their population and tax base stabilized and gain new opportunities for complementary industries to grow. A lot of the government, next section says, doesn't need to be in D.C. Yeah, there is a compelling logic, basic logic, to the idea of a capital city that concentrates government functions in one place, so agency leaders can consult with Congress and staff can coordinate across agencies. The Treasury Department is, for instance, located next to the White House, and there's literally a secure tunnel between the buildings, so the president and his team can take advantage of Treasury's considerable institutional knowledge and expertise when crafting economic policy. Foreign diplomats are sent here to Washington, so America's domestically based workforce of foreign service officers also needs to be based here. But a lot of important things the government does are not political in this way. The National Institutes of Health, for example, employs a staff of some 20,000 people, a disproportionately well-educated group of technical experts out in the suburbs of Bethesda, Maryland. They play a crucial scientific and public interest role, but they're not involved in day-to-day politics. The NIH's work could be done easily from Cleveland, or say Atlanta, where the CDC does its work, right? Where 20,000 highly educated tax-paying workers would be welcomed. Their presence would create secondary jobs in industries like restaurants, education, and home remodeling, and an infusion of skilled workers alongside the metro area's existing health and educational resources would help build up the larger regional biomedical research sector. In general, looking at which agencies are already not going through the trouble of locating themselves in downtown Washington is a decent signpost of which agency's core mission is not profoundly helped by proximity to the centers of political power. A couple of bullet-pointed items here. Nearly 3,000 people work at the National Institute of Standards and Technology in Gaithersburg, Maryland. The Social Security Administration's central office is in Woodlawn, Maryland, outside of Baltimore. The 4,000 employees of the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, remember them, are also in Woodlawn. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office already has a satellite office in Detroit. Legacy structuring there, really. But maintains its main headquarters in Alexandria, Virginia. The U.S. Geological Survey, several thousand people working in Reston, Virginia, and I know some of them. The National Weather Service has 5,000 employees and a headquarters in Silver Spring, Maryland. These and other agencies moved out of D.C. years ago in search of more affordable real estate, a recognition that their mission does not require routine physical proximity to elected officials. Keeping this kind of agency near D.C. was obviously more convenient for existing staff who were spared the need to drastically relocate or find a new job elsewhere. But given the growing strains of regional inequality in the United States, it would make sense for Congress to insist on taking a broader view of the national interest. Many of these agencies have technical or scientific missions whose highly skilled workforce would be a tremendous asset to cities with proud legacies that are currently suffering from brain drain and population loss. Very, very true. And I think well worth considering. And also, by the way, it's a political liability and a serious one at that. That it's great for us here, but for everybody else, if you want to once again start paying attention to economic anxiety, for instance, and not just dismissing it as code. It is often said that the Washington, D.C. area is virtually recession-proof, and that is because of the amount of government activity and government employment that goes on here. And I see what they mean. I mean, people get set back in any serious recession here just like anywhere else, but not necessarily to the same extent, even if you're not involved in working for the federal government. And by the way, if you are involved in working for the federal government, in many ways, you're in a constant state of recession as it is, since they constantly are freezing pay for federal employees. But there would be a lot less, well, there might be even better, a lot less need for frequent pay raises if you were dealing with the much less expensive markets of a mid-sized Midwest city rather than Washington, D.C., well, that would be pretty good for the government books. In addition to all this, but it's not even an addition. I think that's one of the main points here in all this. Okay, so next section. Some D.C. power centers are supposed to be independent. Another good reason, perhaps, to disperse them a little bit. Another block of agencies that we should consider relocating are the ones where close coordination with elected officials is explicitly contrary to their mandate. The alphabet soup of independent commission-style regulatory agencies. SEC, CFTC, FTC, FEC, FCC, FAA fits the bill here. Oh, you know what just struck me? One thing that I don't know whether it gets discussed in all this, but something that would have to break up, move, travel, or perhaps distribute its intellectual resources among the country at large would be the circuit courts of appeals for the D.C. Circuit and the Federal Circuit, which are necessarily the D.C. Circuit, of course, is obviously necessarily located here, but the Federal Circuit as well. A specific expertise in dealing with questions of interagency conflicts, federal law, federal regulatory schemes, etc., all of which are cited here and handle some of the most complex cases involving the government and governmental departments that you're ever likely to see. And, it may be just a matter of, so the courts can remain here, and there might have to you could just deal with it in terms of special federal procedural rules where if the dispute arises in a in the, pick a circuit, in the 8th Circuit, because we've moved the regulatory agency that deals with it to one of the states in that circuit, and there's some doubt. It would be a shame to say that to the federal judges who sit there, but there may be some doubt that they are comfortable, certainly capable, but comfortable dealing with the issue. There are a number of ways you could deal with that, and one might be, removing the case to the Federal Circuit or to the D.C. Circuit, or I guess you could probably bring in a judge for a 3-judge panel from D.C. or Federal Circuit, specially, and just move the one judge as opposed to the entirety of the case. But then, of course, the case can be packed up in papers and electronics and sent off there. All right. Well, that's small potatoes, but it's certainly worth thinking about. Only because I'm a lawyer, I think about that stuff. All right. So back to the alphabet soup of independent commission-style regulatory agencies, herein named and again, FCC, FEC, FAA, etc. They all fit the bill here, but so do some major D.C. players like the Federal Reserve Board of Governors and the FBI, which is moving out to the suburbs anyway. These agencies' heads do interact with Congress more frequently than the technical agencies, so decentralization might be more trouble than it's worth, but at the same time, these are arms of the executive branch that are by law supposed to be operating independently of the White House, symbolically manifesting that independence by having the work done out of Detroit rather than D.C. could have some value. And after all, there are airplanes or secure communications means by which that kind of consultation can be done just as well. And, nobody's going to begrudge the money of the FBI director flying in from out of state if he's summoned to Congress for testimony. That's not a huge deal. Each of these regulatory agencies is surrounded by a swarm of highly paid lawyers, economists, and lobbyists who make careers out of influencing their decisions. Right now, these folks all live in the D.C. metro area, where they drive up the cost of already expensive housing. Their spending would do a lot more good in Detroit, Milwaukee, or Cincinnati, where they would create secondary jobs and bolster a larger regional economy. Greater Washington will get over it, is the next section, and that's probably true. Of course, pulling tens of thousands of federal jobs out of the D.C. area will, in the short term, impose some pain on the local economy here. But a crucial element of the case for decentralization is that this is not a purely zero-sum transfer. The D.C. region of 2016 has grown big enough, rich enough, and skilled enough, and expensive enough that the marginal dollar of federal spending does little real good. 5 years ago, Congress passed the sequestration deal, which imposed large spending cuts, and then exempting major entitlement programs from those cuts, leading to severe cuts to the kind of federal programs whose dollars tend to stay local. At the time, D.C. officials worried that this would hammer the regional economy. But we bounced back quickly. The D.C. region's current big economic difficulties don't stem from a lack of high-end jobs for highly skilled workers. We struggle instead with affordable housing, a creaking metro system, overburdened roadways, and a constant lack of upward mobility for the region's less skilled workers. If even a fairly large number of well-paid federal jobs vanished, it would just slightly stall the overall upward march of regional housing costs. If politicians from Maryland and Virginia could convince Congress to throw in some money for much-needed upgrades to our mass transit system as compensation for lost jobs, it would, probably should be saying could, be a win-win. In the long term, we should think bigger. Obviously, the federal government has a unique ability to alter the concentration of economic activity in the D.C. area, but the general problem of good-paying jobs being overly concentrated in expensive coastal metropolitan areas that don't particularly want to build oodles of new housing, even while existing residential infrastructure goes to waste in Midwestern areas suffering population loss, isn't limited to D.C. And Matt says, my work over the years has largely focused on the ideas of trying to persuade Silicon Valley, Greater Boston, and New York City and its suburbs to agree to build more. That remains a good idea under any scenario. But it's also absurd for a great nation to leave its long-term economic trajectory so fully hostage to the whims of the Palo Alto Planning Commission and a motley assortment of New York community boards and snob zoning groups on Long Island. And this is making it sound a little bit more like, hey, you know who might really like this? Our ignored white working class Trump voting Midwesterners. All the answers aren't in D.C. after all. And I thought that might even ring a bell here, this last sentence. The Planning Commission and community boards and snob zoning groups on Long Island. Congress is not going to pass a law telling Google it needs to move to Toledo. But if Donald Trump is going to invest time and energy in jawboning a single medium-sized company to keep a single small production facility open in Indianapolis, he should take a little time to think bigger. I'm not sure what it would take to convince a technology giant or three to decamp from Silicon Valley, where the political system doesn't seem to want them, to more welcoming pastures near the Great Lakes. But it would be at least worth trying to find out. Well, I thought that was awfully interesting, and I think it would be tremendously helpful symbolically just to disperse some of these, as he points out, well-paying jobs and the secondary jobs that they would create out among areas that are in decline, or at least think they're in decline. But also, I think it would be well worth it in this anti-government, anti-incumbent, anti-establishment mood to expose people to the reality of who makes the government work, how they do it, and why they do it the way they do it, by having them live among them and having some of the folks join in doing that work and see that they are, yes, actual human beings raising families, decent people just like they are, and in fact, maybe the same as they are, because some of those people will go to work for some of those agencies as well. I think it gives everybody a chance to have some skin in the game and to have a stake in the operations of the federal government, which really ought to have been the case all along. So, was this article helpful? Sure, I think so. I was glad to share it with you. even if it did mean having to sit there and read Matthew Iglesias for a while. I like him just fine. Okay. So, other things that I might be able to fit in the last couple of minutes. There is, of course, more on fake news. I'll probably save that story for tomorrow, just because it's an annoying profile of people who write fake news. Well worth discussion, but we'll save it for tomorrow. But no promises there either. But one thing I do want to fit in as we wrap up, another rather spectacular gun fail story. I think we could fit into the next couple of minutes here. Speaking of our friends in Midwestern cities who are doing quite well, a deadly Cleveland dinner party at which there was a spectacular example of gun fail recently turns out to have been perhaps more spectacular than I first knew. I could see that this was a weird one when I first heard about it. It was having been described as just the description of a dinner party going on in this apartment in Cleveland. The dinner party is kind of a quaint and antiquated sort of function, really. I could tell there was something odd and different about what was going on here. As it turns out, I heard in the initial description it sounded like they were at a fairly ritzy apartment someplace in Cleveland. So I said, okay, so it's one of the upscale neighborhoods here. And the upscale folks getting just as involved in the dumb gunplay as anybody else. And unfortunately resulting in the death of a friend here. And it was just a little weirder even than I first imagined. Deadly Cleveland dinner party was live streamed online. The host charged in the accidental shooting death of a friend. This reported in the Cleveland papers over the weekend. I mean, the gun fail part of it is pretty basic, but what was most amazing, I think, was, the live streaming. And they didn't live stream the shooting. Thank God. I think the streaming was done by that point. But I guess the interesting part about this is think about the kind of people who, and I can't play this on the air. I was thinking about doing this. I'm going to have to spend some time bleeping it because they're a little raw in their language. But think about who would be live streaming on Facebook live streaming their dinner party. It's some youngish guys, mostly in their mid-20s. But the deal is this. The Clean 4 radio rundown, as written up in the Cleveland papers, says it this way. A Cleveland man is charged in connection with the deadly accidental shooting of a friend during a dinner party on Thursday night, part of which was live streamed on Facebook Live, according to court records and a partial recording of the video obtained by Cleveland.com. Stephen Leannes, I don't know how he would pronounce it, Leannais, 30 years old, and a fashionable-looking young fellow with a shaven head here in his mug shots. I assume this is one of his first mug shots. Was charged with third-degree felony involuntary manslaughter. He's in the city jail awaiting his first court date. Police say he was drunk at the time of the shooting, according to court records. Anthony Stafford II, 27, was killed in a shooting that happened about 9:50 p.m. Thursday in Leannes' apartment in the Brick Lofts Apartments at historic West Tech High in the 2200 block of West 93rd Street, according to police reports. So what's going on here? Our host is live streaming the dinner party on Facebook Live. A person who viewed the recording of the incident provided the video to Cleveland.com. The video was posted prior to the shooting and doesn't include the shooting as far as I know. So basic story here is the guy has gotten himself a new Glock and his friends are over and it's basically, hey dudes, want to see my cool new Glock. Well, when this thing is sufficiently bleeped, I'll have to play it for you, or maybe we won't even do that. I don't know, but you should take a look at it. I'll include it in the roundup for Scott in the email I sent him, and we'll put it in there. You got to see it. It's the most cringe-inducing thing you ever saw when you know what happened, because it's a video of 2 or 3 dude bros basically playing around with a Glock, and the guy whose gun it is hands it over to his friend. And first of all, he hands him a loaded gun, which is like completely imbecilic and counter to all the rules. And once again, all the people who think they're so super cool with their guns and they follow all the rules until they don't, he still makes this mistake. Hands over the gun loaded to his friend. His friend, playing around with it, actually manages not to shoot himself, but the whole video is his friend sticking the gun in his mouth and saying, I swear to God, I'm going to do it, and putting it to his head and pointing at the camera, and people saying, don't point that at me. And only in the middle of the video does the gun owner say, ho, wait a minute, that's loaded. Dude, hold on a second. Now, you gave it to him loaded, by the way. And he takes it back and he takes out the magazine. Although he does then appear to be clearing the chamber by working the slide, and he hands it back to him and he says, there, now it's safe. Here, and he shows the camera, here's the magazine, although he calls it a clip at first, but then he corrects himself and says magazine. So now all you people watching know that this gun is safe, etc., etc. Only guess what? Either he didn't clear the chamber effectively and didn't check it, and you don't see any round eject or hear any round hitting the floor or anything like that, even after he works the slide, but who knows whether that would be picked up by the camera. But at any rate, he gives it back to his friend, and his friend is goofing around with it, and it's only when the gun owner, Leanis or whatever, takes it back, it's back in the owner's hands now, and at this point, the story says he lowers it to his side, but as he does so, he somehow squeezes the trigger, fires, and then hits the third guy who wasn't screwing around with the gun before, and who, by the way, happens to be the only black guy at the dinner party, which they make a big deal out of as he arrives. So anyway, it's nice that they have a rather diverse group of friends that they would invite over for dinner, but sad that they killed the only black guy that was willing to come over for a number of reasons. It's very sad. But anyway, the poor guy, he just comes in, he's looking at the dinner, he's enjoying himself. He doesn't touch the damn gun, and minutes later, he's dead. It's cringeworthy, like I said, watching this thing because you know somebody dies. And I don't know whether I cringe more. Would I cringe more if the guy who was sticking it in his mouth is the one who eventually shot himself and died? Or is it worse that the guy who had the good sense not to screw around with the damn thing ended up taking the bullet and dying? I can't even tell you. There's no way to rank that, obviously, which is one of the more amazing things you've ever seen. I'll include the video and whatever. Maybe I'll try and bleep it just so you can have a sense of the audio if you're not keen on watching it yourself or whatever. But really, truly amazing, and just another example of, oh my God, people are crazy. Why do they keep saying that they follow all the rules when it's so obvious that they don't? And to see it on video, well, gee whiz, it's just something else is all I can say. Anyway, didn't mean to close out on that crazy note. Why don't I instead close out by telling you what's coming up next on the after show. It is Monday for them too, and I'm sure they've got a lot to get to. Last week, Boeing made a $1 million, quote, donation to Trump's inaugural after being attacked by the president-select. This week, Trump targets Lockheed Martin. He's looking for another $1 million, and I told you he's allowed to keep that, by the way. The Kremlin praises Secretary of State pick, remember that's going to be Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson, Exxon new, by the way, as being highly professional. About $500 billion worth, and the Trump transition team has demanded the Energy Department, provide a detailed list of the civil servants and contractors involved in key Obama administration climate policies and UN climate meetings, just in case, online trolls wanted to visit them.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com, you have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
There's lots more, of course, but that one really interested me, so do be sure to tune in and listen to that story. On the last half, they'll be reporting on a recent spike in vandals defacing Korans and books about Islam in libraries across the U.S. And a century after his death, the Japanese literary giant and author of the beloved I Am a Cat returns to life as a robot.